They say betrayal sounds different when it comes from your own blood. For me, it wasn't just a sound, it was a knife across the ribs. A single sentence, whispered behind a closed door, cracked my life wide open. And in that silence after, I knew I wasn't going to forgive. I was going to bury them with truth. It started in the most ordinary place. My kitchen. The old ceiling fan hummed above me, barely moving the heavy summer air. The smell of burnt coffee clung to the counters, mixing with motor oil from the garage. I was rinsing a chipped plate when I heard it, voices. Low, urgent. Not strangers. My own son and his wife. He won't last much longer, she said. Her voice, sharp as broken glass. Good, my son replied. When he goes, everything's ours. The house, the savings, even the land. We just have to keep him comfortable until the paperwork clears. The plate slipped from my hand. It shattered against the sink like a gunshot. Silence followed, then quick footsteps overhead. The sound of a bedroom door shutting. Laughter forced, too loud, trying to cover what I'd just heard. I stood there, water running, plate fragments glittering under the kitchen light. My breath came slow, steady. A soldier's breath. I'd been through worse, but never this kind of enemy. The next morning, the house looked the same, but it wasn't. The oak banister I'd sanded with my wife 30 years ago felt colder. The family photos on the wall, birthdays, graduations, Christmas mornings, looked like evidence of a crime. Even the smell of bacon from the skillet turned my stomach. At breakfast, my son Dustin pushed eggs around his plate without looking at me. His wife, Amanda, scrolled through her phone, diamond ring catching the sunlight like a signal flare. You should really think about assisted living, Dad, Dustin said suddenly. He didn't meet my eyes. Would be easier for everyone. Everyone. Meaning them. I sipped my coffee, letting the bitter taste burn my tongue. Maybe, I said, voice flat. Amanda looked up then, a flicker of victory in her smile. By noon, I was in the garage, sweat dripping down my back, the heavy air thick with gasoline and rust. My hands moved over old tools, the same ones I'd used to build this place from the ground up. Every hammer strike, every nail, had been for my family. And now they were plotting to strip it away while I was still breathing. I sat on the workbench, oil stains spreading across my jeans, and let the anger settle into something sharper. Cold. Precise. In the army, we had a saying, don't fight back mad. Fight back ready. 2 nights later, the confirmation came. I'd pretended to fall asleep in my recliner, TV buzzing low. At 11:43 p.m., their voices drifted down the hallway. He's signing everything over without even realizing, Amanda whispered. By fall, it'll be done, Dustin replied. Then laughter. Soft. Greedy. Like wolves circling a carcass. My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth would crack. They thought I was asleep. They thought I was weak. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the kitchen table. Amanda placed a stack of mail beside my plate, smiling too sweetly. Just bills, she said, casual. But her eyes betrayed her, flicking to the top envelope. Legal letterhead. She wanted me to sign without reading. I slid the envelope aside, slow and deliberate. Her smile twitched. Dustin cleared his throat, staring at his coffee. I didn't open it. Not yet. Timing is everything. Later, I sat alone on the porch. The cicadas screamed in the oaks, heat rising from the driveway like waves off desert sand. In my lap lay the unopened envelope. My fingers traced the seal. Inside, I knew, was their first move. Their opening play. I lit a cigarette I'd sworn I'd quit years ago. The smoke curled in the heavy air, sharp and bitter. I thought about my wife, gone 10 years now. She would have told me to walk away, but I wasn't built for walking away. I tore open the envelope. The words jumped at me, black on white, neat lines meant to look harmless. But I saw the truth in them instantly. Power of attorney, transfer of assets, legal chains dressed up as family concern. They wanted to bury me alive. I leaned back, smoke stinging my eyes, and felt the old soldier in me wake up. The man who planned missions in silence, who studied weak points until an enemy collapsed under its own weight. I wasn't going to sign. I was going to sign them. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my study with a yellow notepad, the clock ticking like a metronome of war. Every detail of their betrayal went onto paper. Names, dates, patterns, even their careless words. By dawn, a plan had begun to form. They thought they were moving me like a pawn across the board. But I'd been a strategist my whole damn life. And pawns? Sometimes pawns become queens. The sun rose, painting the horizon blood red. My reflection in the window looked older, harder. For the first time since I heard their whispers, I almost smiled. They thought I wouldn't fight back. They were about to learn that I fight best when the enemy sleeps closest to my table. I didn't storm into their bedroom with accusations. That's what they expected, an old man's outburst, wild and easy to dismiss. No, I stayed silent. Silence was my first weapon. Silence makes enemies talk. The next few days, I played my part. Shuffled around the house with my coffee mug. Nodded politely when Amanda explained why I should save my strength and let her handle the bills. I signed nothing. Every envelope went into the drawer of my study, unopened but not forgotten. At night, I lay in bed, listening. Their whispers moved through the thin walls like rats in the dark. Once he's in home, we'll sell the truck. Don't worry, he's too tired to notice. Each word was another nail in their coffin. On the fourth morning, I made my first move. The safe in my study had been collecting dust for years. Inside, old service medals, marriage documents, a few bones. Nothing spectacular. But I had something more dangerous than cash, copies of every financial record since the day my wife died. I placed them neatly into a new folder labeled House Maintenance. Then I slid it back into the safe and left the key in its usual spot. A trap. That night, I pretended to sleep in the recliner. At 12:17, the floor creaked upstairs. Slow, deliberate steps. Dustin. The safe door clicked 20 minutes later. I didn't need to see his face to know. When the door shut again, I rose, padded barefoot to the study. The folder had been moved. Just half an inch. Enough for me to know he'd taken the bait. I smiled in the dark. Test 1 passed. The next day, Amanda served breakfast like nothing happened. Her perfume smelled too strong, too sweet, trying to cover nerves. Dustin scrolled through his phone. "You should let us refinance the house, Dad," he said, not looking at me. "Rates are low. It'd protect your future." There it was, the pitch. My fake folder had given them just enough to believe they'd found the opening. I chewed my toast slowly, letting the silence stretch until he looked up. "Maybe," I said. "Show me paperwork first." Amanda's smile froze for a split second before she recovered. "Of course," she chirped. "We'll handle everything." I'd just given them rope, and I planned to watch them hang themselves with it. By afternoon, I was in town. My boots scuffed across the cracked sidewalk outside the county clerk's office. Inside, the air smelled of paper, dust, and old carpet. "Morning, Mr. Selvers," the clerk said. She knew me. Small towns never forget a face. "I need copies of my deed, and any recent filings." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. A printer hummed. She handed me a stack of papers warm from the machine. I scanned the last page. Filed 2 days ago. My son's name, his wife's signature, forged transfer authorization. Cold fury crept up my spine. They weren't just planning anymore. They'd already started. That evening I waited. The porch light flickered as crickets screamed in the trees. I smoked a cigarette down to the filter, the ember glowing like a warning flare in the dark. When Dustin pulled into the driveway, his truck headlights swept across me. He got out, briefcase in hand, wearing the smug grin of a man who thought he was 2 moves ahead. "Evening, Dad," he said. Too casual. "Evening." I exhaled smoke through my nose. "Busy day?" He shrugged. "Always is." Amanda stepped out behind him, already dressed like she was headed to a gala. Diamond earrings, silk plus. They were celebrating early. I watched them walk inside, laughing about something I wasn't meant to hear. My fingers tightened around the last cigarette in the pack. They thought I was cornered, but soldiers fight best with their back against a wall. I made my second move the next morning. Coffee steaming in the kitchen, newspaper folded neatly, I dropped my words like a grenade. I stopped by the clerk's office yesterday, I said. Amanda froze mid-sip. Dustin's paper crumpled in his fist. Oh, he asked, voice strained. Yeah, I continued casually. Asked about property records. Funny thing, they said there's been some recent filings under our address. Couldn't tell me much, though. Just thought it was odd. Silence. Heavy. Amanda set her cup down too quickly. A tiny splash of coffee stained the tablecloth. Dustin forced a laugh. Probably a clerical error, Dad. These offices mess things up all the time. Maybe, I said, eyes locked on his. But I asked them to keep me updated if anything else comes through. His jaw tightened. Amanda's nails tapped against her cup. For the first time, they looked less like predators and more like prey caught in a flashlight beam. That night, Dustin's voice boomed through the wall. He knows something. Amanda hissed, then we push faster. Get his signature. He's not as sharp as he used to be. I leaned back in bed, notebook open, writing every word. Evidence. Proof. Ammunition. The plan was working. They thought they were leading me to the slaughter. But every step they took was straight into the trap I was setting. The final stroke of part 2 came 3 days later. Dustin placed a stack of papers in front of me at breakfast. Fresh ink. Legal headers. Dad, these need your signature. Just routine. Protects the house in case something happens to you. Amanda smiled, wide, rehearsed. We'll handle the hard parts. You just sign. I picked up the pen. My hand hovered above the page. Their eyes gleamed. Then I set the pen down slowly. I'll have my lawyer look at these first. The color drained from Amanda's face. Dustin's fist clenched so hard the pen cracked in his grip. I leaned back, sipping my coffee, savoring the bitter taste. The first ray I'll hit had landed. I woke the next morning to the smell of burnt toast. Amanda wasn't careful in the kitchen. She never was. Everything about her screamed performance, loud laughter, flashy perfume, smiles that lasted just half a second too long. Dustin bought into it. He always had. I drank my coffee slowly, eyes following them as they moved around the kitchen. Dustin with his stiff posture, papers tucked under his arm like a general heading to battle. Amanda draped in silk like she was headed to a photo shoot. You should relax, Dad, Dustin said. Let us handle the hard stuff. I gave him a thin smile. Hard stuff builds calluses. You've never liked those. Amanda's laugh was brittle. That day, I paid a visit to old friends. Men who remembered the kind of soldier I used to be. Men who didn't ask too many questions. First stop was the diner. The owner, Frank, had been in Nam the same time I was. We never served together, but soldiers recognize each other's ghosts. Morning, Bob, he said, sliding a cup of black coffee across the counter. What's got you in that look? Family trouble, I answered. He didn't press. Just nodded slowly, eyes narrowing. Want me to keep an ear up? That'd be good. Small towns talk. Bankers, clerks, bartenders, they all spill something after a couple of drinks. I needed whispers, rumors, receipts. Anything Dustin and Amanda left behind while thinking they were invisible. By evening, I had my first lead. A friend at the courthouse clerk's office slipped me a thin envelope. Inside, photocopies of loan applications. Dustin's signature. Amanda's neat handwriting. My address. My property. Their scheme wasn't just talk, it was paper. Paper with legal weight. They'd tried to shift assets before I'd even smelled smoke. The cold in my chest turned sharper. Soldiers have a saying, the first bullet you don't hear is the one that kills you. Not this time. That night, I started leaving decoys. A folder left out on my desk, full of fake bank statements I'd printed from an old typewriter, numbers too perfect to be real. A phone call I made just loud enough for Amanda to overhear, muttering about adjusting offshore transfers. Even an envelope addressed to a law firm in Houston, left half open on the hall table. I watched her eyes linger on it when she thought I wasn't looking. Her fingers twitched, but she didn't dare touch it in front of me. The bait was set. 3 days later, I got confirmation they'd bitten. Frank called me from the diner. Saw your boy meet with that slick lawyer from Davenport. Looked nervous. Amanda kept her sunglasses on inside. Always a tell. Perfect. They were already scrambling to figure out how much I knew. That night, over dinner, Dustin made his move. Dad, about that folder in your study. He kept his tone casual, but I saw the twitch in his jaw. I looked him dead in the eye. Which folder? His fork froze. Amanda jumped in too fast. He just means, if you're reorganizing, we can help. You shouldn't strain yourself. I let the silence stretch until the only sound was the hum of the fridge. Then I said, slow and steady, I've been handling my affairs longer than you've been breathing. But it's sweet you care. Amanda's smile cracked. Dustin's knuckles whitened around his fork. The next morning, I drove 2 hours to meet an old contact, Marcus, retired detective who owed me favors. We sat in his cluttered office that smelled of old coffee and printer ink. You want me to dig? He asked. Credit cards, bank records, anything tying Dustin or Amanda to my property. Quietly. He raised an eyebrow. Family business? Not for long, I said. When I returned home, Amanda was on the phone in the kitchen, voice low, back turned. She didn't hear me step in. I told you he's suspicious. We need this done fast. The old man won't last forever. The old man. I cleared my throat. She spun, plastering on that fake smile. Oh, hi. Just ordering catering for the weekend. I nodded, hiding my own smile. Let her think she'd fooled me. By the end of the week, Marcus sent me a file thick enough to choke a horse. Inside, credit card statements with charges at luxury stores. A hidden joint account under Amanda's maiden name. Evidence of a forged notarization attempt, my name, but not my signature. I stared at the papers under the dim light of my study, the smell of dust and ink heavy in the room. Every page was proof. Proof I wasn't crazy. Proof my instincts were right. And proof they were digging their own graves. At breakfast, Dustin slid another contract across the table. Dad, this is urgent. Just needs your signature. Amanda leaned forward, rehearsed sweetness dripping from her voice. It's just a safety net, in case anything happens to you. I picked up the papers, leafed through them with exaggerated slowness. Their eyes gleamed like predators smelling blood. Then I set them down and smiled coldly. Funny thing, my lawyer said the same line last week, almost word for word. The color drained from Amanda's face. Dustin stammered, Your lawyer? I sipped my coffee. Bitter, black, strong. Yeah, turns out I'm not as senile as you hoped. Their silence was better than any applause. When you've stared at enough battlefield maps, you learn one thing fast. The side that strikes first usually controls the tempo. I wasn't about to let Dustin or Amanda dictate mine. The morning after I'd cornered them with the mention of my lawyer, the house felt tense. Amanda tiptoed around me, her perfume thick enough to choke a horse. Dustin slammed drawers and cupboards louder than usual, trying to project control. But they were rattled. I could smell it in the silence between their words. I drove downtown, not to the lawyer's office, but to the county recorder's office. Papers don't lie. And sure enough, tucked in the system, I found something that almost made me laugh. A quitclaim deed, prepared but not yet filed, transferring my house into Dustin's name. The signature line for grantor bore a clumsy copy of my handwriting. Sloppy work. Almost insulting. I paid for certified copies. Paper ammunition. Back home, I didn't let them see what I carried. Instead, I left a different kind of bait. A thin folder, clearly labeled Estate Plan Updates, placed neatly on my desk with the corner sticking out. Inside, blank pages. That night, Amanda lingered by my study door a little too long. I caught her reflection in the glass, her hand twitching toward the folder before she pulled back. Like a child afraid of the cookie jar. Good. Curiosity always betrays thieves. 2 days later, Marcus, my detective friend, sent me something better than gold. Photos. Amanda with a man who wasn't Dustin. Different motels, same cheap secrecy. Alongside the photos, he'd stapled financial records, a joint account under Amanda's maiden name, quietly funneled full of my stolen assets. So the princess wasn't just greedy. She was hedging her bets, building an escape plan for herself. Dustin was just the mule. The war had shifted. I tested them the next evening over dinner. So I said, cutting into my steak, I had an interesting chat with an old friend. Told me forgery carries 5 years minimum in the state. Dustin froze mid-bite. Amanda's fork clinked against her plate. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? I asked, keeping my tone casual, almost bored. Amanda forced a laugh. Dad, you've been reading too many crime novels. Maybe, I said, staring at Dustin. Or maybe I've been paying closer attention than you think. The silence that followed was worth every sleepless night they'd given me. The next morning, Dustin tried a different tactic. He cornered me in the garage, voice low, pretending to be conciliatory. Dad, I think we've all had some misunderstandings. Amanda and we only want what's best for you. You can't handle everything alone anymore. I stepped closer until we were nearly nose to nose. My voice was a blade. I carried 3 platoons on my back in Iraq. I handled men bleeding out in the dirt, with rounds still flying overhead. Don't tell me I can't handle paperwork in my own damn house. His bravado cracked. He stepped back. That was the first time I saw fear, real fear, in his eyes. By Friday, I was ready for my first strike. Amanda left her laptop open in the kitchen, careless. Maybe deliberate, maybe bait. Either way, I took a chance. A quick USB drive, a quick copy. Inside her folders? Draft petitions for guardianship over me. They were trying to declare me incompetent. Amanda had already filled in dates. The arrogance of it. I spent that night building my own file, forged deed, guardianship drafts, Marcus's photos. Layer by layer, the noose tightening. Then came the crack I'd been waiting for. Saturday morning, I stepped out to get the paper and found Dustin pacing on the porch, phone pressed to his ear. He didn't see me. He suspects. I don't know how much, but if he moves first, we're screwed. No, don't call yet. Let me handle it. I'll get him to sign something this week. His voice trembled. I cleared my throat. He spun around, pale as chalk. Good morning, son, I said evenly, tapping my coffee mug. Trouble sleeping? He mumbled something and vanished back inside. That night, I slid a single copy of the forged deed under Dustin's bedroom door. No note, no explanation, just proof that I had it. The next morning, the house was silent as a tomb. They avoided me at breakfast. Amanda's eyes were swollen from crying, Dustin's jaw locked tight. For the first time in weeks, I felt the balance of power shift entirely onto my side. But power is like dynamite, you have to use it before it rots in your hands. And that's when the phone rang. Unknown number. A voice I hadn't heard in years, my granddaughter. Grandpa, Dad's been saying some strange things lately. About moving you into a facility. Is it true? My pulse hammered. They hadn't just tried to cut me out, they were preparing to erase me completely. Sweetheart, I said, my voice steady as steel, listen carefully. Everything your father told you is a lie. And I can prove it. Her sharp intake of breath told me the war had just pulled in a new player. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, because of calculation. My granddaughter's voice had lit a fuse I hadn't planned to touch yet. She was young, sharp, and most importantly, uncorrupted. If she'd called me, it meant she already doubted her parents. Doubt is the crack where truth slides in. At 6 a.m., I dialed her back. She answered on the first ring, voice hushed. Grandpa? Morning, sweetheart. Listen close. I don't want to drag you into something ugly, but you deserve to know who's lying under your roof. She whispered, I knew it. Dad and Amanda, they've been acting strange. Whispering when they think I can't hear. Talking about guardianship? What does that even mean? It means, I said flatly, they're trying to steal everything I've worked for. And when they're done, they'll put me in a corner to rot. But I won't let them. I just need you to be my eyes and ears for a little while. A long pause. Then a sharp breath. Tell me what to do. By noon, I had my first piece of intel. She texted me from school, a photo snapped off Amanda's desk, a draft letter addressed to a long-term care facility. My name at the top. A move-in date penciled for next month. I stared at the screen, the bile rising. They weren't just plotting, they had timetables. That evening, I baited them. I sat in my recliner, an old photo album across my lap, letting the light fall just right on the pictures. Amanda walked through the room and froze when she saw me. Going through memories, Dad? Just reminding myself who I raised, I said. Funny how children change. Her smile twitched. People grow up. Grow, I muttered. Or rot. She left without answering. But I knew she'd carry those words straight to Dustin. Good. Let him sweat. 2 nights later, my granddaughter delivered the bombshell. They're meeting with a banker tomorrow, she whispered over the phone. Dad said you won't even know what hit you. I smiled in the dark. Sweetheart, that's exactly what I wanted him to think. The next morning, I was already waiting outside First Union, the same bank where I'd shut down their access last week. When Dustin strutted in with Amanda on his arm, they nearly tripped over themselves seeing me in the lobby. Dad, what are you doing here? Dustin's voice cracked too high. Making sure the vultures don't circle, I said, holding up a folder thick with documents. Why? You hoping to sign me out of my own life? Amanda grabbed his sleeve. We're just here for routine inquiries. The banker approached. Mr. Selvers, I have your fraud alert on file. Shall we talk privately? I turned to Dustin. You hear that? My banker calls me, not you. Their faces flushed crimson. Every eye in the lobby was on them. It was a small win, but in war, morale breaks before bodies do. That night, Dustin snapped. He cornered me in the garage, fists balled. You think you can humiliate me in public? You think you can turn my own daughter against me? She turned herself, I said coldly. She saw the truth you tried to bury. He stepped closer, rage in his eyes. Amanda's voice rang out from the doorway. Stop it, Dustin. Not here. I didn't flinch. I leaned in so close he could smell the coffee on my breath. Go ahead, boy. Raise your hand to me. Give me the last piece of evidence I need. His fist trembled, then dropped. He stormed out into the night, slamming the door so hard dust rained from the rafters. Amanda lingered, her face pale. Why are you doing this? Because I taught you better, I said, turning away. And you chose greed instead. The following day, my granddaughter slipped me something that nearly made me laugh. Amanda's private notebook. Page after page of lists, luxury condos, shopping trips, inheritance, notes in the margins. I copied every page, scanned them into my drive, then returned the book exactly where she'd found it. Amanda would never know I'd seen her naked greed in her own handwriting. Friday evening, I set the table for dinner myself. Steak, potatoes, wine. I poured glasses for all 3 of us, me, Dustin, Amanda. To family, I said when they sat down, forcing the toast. They raised their glasses, unsure. I let the silence stretch, then laid down the first printed page from Amanda's notebook, her handwriting in bold black and white, her face strained. Dustin grabbed it, eyes darting across the words. What is this? He stammered. Your future, I said, because next week, the judge will hear every word you've plotted, with documents, recordings, and now your own child as witness. Amanda's lips parted, trembling. Dustin's hand shook so hard the page rattled, and I leaned back, sipping my wine, the taste of victory already settling on my tongue. You could smell fear in the kitchen that night. Not the sharp kind, like sweat before a fist fight. This was the slow, rotten stink of 2 people who realized the walls had closed in and the air was thinning. Dustin tried to cover it with noise, slamming drawers, pacing the hallway, muttering curses he thought I couldn't hear. Amanda covered hers with silence, lips pressed thin, eyes darting to every corner of the room like shadows were listening. Me? I slept like a man who already knew the next day's weather. Monday morning came heavy with gray clouds. By 8:30 a.m., I was in probate court, courtroom 3B, the very chamber they'd chosen to try and bury me under guardianship papers. Oak benches, flag at half-mast, the smell of dust and disinfectant. They walked in together, Amanda in a navy dress that tried too hard, Dustin in a suit one size too small. Their confidence lasted exactly 3 seconds until they saw my table. Not empty, not lonely, packed. Beside me, Lydia, my attorney, sharp as barbed wire. Behind us, Deputy Mason Pike, uniform crisp, body cam blinking. And 2 rows back, my granddaughter, arms folded, chin high, glaring at her parents like she finally saw them clear. Amanda went pale. Dustin's lips moved, whispering a prayer or a curse. The judge read the petition first. Emergency guardianship over Robert Selvers, citing cognitive decline, unsafe living conditions, vulnerable adult status. I stood before he could finish. Your Honor, those are lies. And I have proof. I dropped a folder on the bench. Out slid the forged deed with Dustin's fake signature. Amanda's notebook, page after greedy page. Marcus's surveillance photos. A USB drive with their midnight whisperings, clear as day. The judge's eyebrows climbed higher with each item. By the time I finished, the courtroom was silent. You could hear the hum of the old ceiling fan over our heads. Mr. Selvers, the judge said finally, I think we're done here. He turned to my son and Amanda. This petition is dismissed. Permanently. And I'm referring these documents to the district attorney for review. Amanda gasped. Dustin swore under his breath. I smiled. Cold. Precise. That was only the morning. By afternoon, the fallout began. Lydia had already filed motions freezing joint accounts under Amanda's maiden name. The bank complied faster than I'd expected. The $27,000 she thought was waiting for her? Locked. By evening, Marcus called me from the sheriff's office. We pulled title company logs. Dustin's already flagged in the fraud alert system. Anyone who touches him gets an automatic red light. Good, I said, sipping coffee on the porch. Let him feel the walls. But the best strike didn't come from me. It came from my granddaughter. That night, she stormed into the kitchen, phone in hand, tears burning but voice steady. I saw everything in court today. I read Mom's notebook. I listened to the recordings. You tried to put Grandpa in a home for money. For money. Amanda reached for her. Sweetheart, you don't understand. Don't touch me, she snapped. You're a liar. Both of you. Dustin's face collapsed like wet plaster. Honey, we were just trying to what? Steal? Destroy him. Her voice cracked. He's the only one in this house who isn't lying. She turned to me. Grandpa, I want to stay with you tonight. I nodded, throat tight. Amanda broke then, sobbing into her hands. Dustin just stared at the floor, a man who'd finally realized the mirror wasn't going to forgive him. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. Next morning, I called an old friend at the Herald. Slid them copies of Amanda's notebook and the court dismissal. Elder exploitation makes good headlines. The kind that stick. By noon, their names weren't just whispered in courthouse halls. They were printed in bold ink for every neighbor, coworker, and church member to read. The article ended with one line that cut like a blade. Sources confirm Mr. Selvers' assets remain entirely under his control. Attempts to defraud him are under investigation. I folded the paper, laid it on the kitchen table. Dustin and Amanda read it in silence. Their faces said everything. They weren't just losing me. They were losing the world's respect. That night, the house sat quiet as a tomb. No whispers. No threats. Just the sound of defeat crawling in their bones. I poured myself a drink, the burn sharp and clean. For the first time in weeks, the air felt light. But wars don't end with the first victory. They end when the enemy can't crawl back for another round. And I wasn't finished making sure of that. Defeated people get desperate. And desperate people stop thinking straight. That week, the house turned into a pressure cooker. Amanda hardly left her room, blinds drawn, whispering into her phone at odd hours. Dustin vanished for long stretches, returning with red eyes and clenched fists, smelling of whiskey and fear. My granddaughter avoided them both, orbiting closer to me, her trust growing with every look they gave her. But I knew silence never lasts. Pressure always finds a crack. The crack came Thursday night. I woke to headlights sweeping across the living room. Midnight. The rumble of an unfamiliar engine. I stepped to the window, careful not to disturb the curtains. A black pickup idled in the driveway. Two men sat inside. Heavy shoulders, faces hidden under caps. Not neighbors. Not friends. My phone buzzed seconds later. Marcus. You awake? He asked. I am. Got chatter tonight. Your son's been asking questions about quick cash favors. Stupid favors. If that truck outside is who I think it is, he's in bed with people who don't forgive. I looked back out at the pickup. Its engine growled once before shutting off. Doors opened. Two silhouettes climbed out. Well, I said, pulling the curtain shut. Let's give them a reception. The knock came 3 minutes later. Heavy, rhythmic, not polite. Amanda's door cracked open upstairs. I heard her whisper, "Dustin, don't too late." He thundered down the stairs, yanked the door wide. The men stepped in without asking. One carried a folder, the other carried nothing but menace. "You got the papers?" the first asked. "Yeah," Dustin muttered, waving them toward the kitchen. "Come on, let's do this fast." I followed, silent, until the overhead light snapped on. Papers spread across the table. Loan documents. My house listed as collateral. My forged signature in black ink, sloppy as a child's scrawl. Amanda appeared behind him, pale, trembling. "This wasn't the plan, Dustin. This wasn't supposed to go this far." The man with the folder snorted. "Lady, your plan doesn't matter. Debt matters. And your husband here owes a river of it." Dustin's face crumpled. "Just give me till next month, no," the other man said flatly. That's when I stepped in. "Evening, gentlemen," I said, voice calm, carrying. "You're in my house. Care to explain why?" For heads snapped toward me. Dustin stammered, Dad, go back upstairs." Not a chance. I walked to the table, laid down a small black device. A blinking red dot. The men froze. One hissed, "That a camera?" "Live feed," I said. "Straight to the sheriff's office. Everything you've said since you walked in has been recorded." A lie. The device was nothing but an old motion sensor I'd gutted. But their eyes said they believed it. Amanda's hands flew to her mouth. Dustin swayed like a drunk. "You forged my name," I said coldly. "Dragged criminals into my house. Put your daughter under the same roof as threats you couldn't pay off." The men exchanged looks. The one with the folder cursed under his breath. "We're not touching this. Too hot." They gathered the papers, muttering as they shoved past Dustin. The door slammed behind them, tires screeching into the night. The house shook with silence. I looked at Dustin. His face sagged, skin gray, eyes hollow. "Do you even understand what you've done?" Amanda whispered, "You've killed us." "No," I said, steady, unforgiving. "You killed yourselves. I'm just letting you watch it happen." My granddaughter came down the stairs, wide-eyed but steady. She'd seen it all. Every word. "Go back to bed, sweetheart," I told her softly. "It's almost over." But in my gut, I knew the war still had one last act. The next morning, Lydia called. "Bob, I got word. The DA's moving forward with charges. Forgery, attempted elder exploitation. They'll be served within the week." I looked out the kitchen window. Dustin sat on the porch, head in his hands. Amanda paced the yard, phone pressed tight to her ear. Both of them looked smaller than I'd ever seen them. Like children waiting for punishment. "Good," I told Lydia. "But I don't just want them in handcuffs. I want them ruined where it hurts most." "And where's that?" she asked. I smiled. Their pride. That evening, I left an envelope on the kitchen table. Inside, copies of Amanda's notebook, Dustin's forged deed, and a note in my handwriting. Tomorrow night, Community Hall, 7 o'clock. If you want to know how this ends, be there. Bring courage. You'll need it. I went upstairs, leaving them to read it. 10 minutes later, Amanda screamed at Dustin. "He's going to humiliate us." In front of everyone. "Then we don't go," Dustin snapped. "You think that'll stop him?" She shot back, voice breaking. "You don't know him at all." She was right. The hall smelled of coffee, old wood, and nerves. Thursday night in Red Oaks meant bingo for the retirees, a church committee in the side room, and me renting the main hall for a family announcement. Word had spread faster than I expected. By 7 o'clock, half the town was packed inside, folding chairs scraping across linoleum, whispers bouncing off low ceilings. At the front, under a row of humming fluorescent lights, I set a single table. On it, a folder, a small speaker, and a stack of papers I'd been carrying like bullets. Dustin and Amanda arrived late. They always were late, thinking it gave them control. Tonight, the room swallowed them whole. Neighbors they'd smiled at in grocery aisles now turned to stare. Amanda's dress looked expensive but wrinkled. Dustin's tie hung loose, his jaw clenched. My granddaughter sat 2 rows back, arms folded, her glare hot enough to blister. I stood. The murmur dropped to silence. Most of you know me. I've lived here 40 years. You've seen me cut my grass, wave at the 4th of July parade, raise a family. What you haven't seen is what happens when family stops being family and starts treating blood like currency. Gasps. A few heads turned toward Dustin and Amanda. They shrank under the weight. I opened the folder and lifted the first sheet. This, I said, holding up the forged deed, is my son's attempt to steal my home. My name, my life, signed in a hand that looks like mine, but isn't. The sheriff, standing by the door, nodded once. He'd already seen the originals. This was theater now, and theater mattered. Next, I slid Amanda's notebook across the table so the first row could see. Plans, condos, shopping lists, notes about my inevitable decline, written in her own hand. Amanda's face drained white. She reached for Dustin's arm, but he pulled away. I pressed play on the speaker. Their whispers filled the hall, Amanda's hiss, Dustin's laugh, the plotting of guardianship, the timing of signatures, the line about keeping him comfortable until the paperwork clears. The room turned to ice. Chairs creaked as neighbors leaned forward, jaws set. Amanda broke first. She stood, voice high, desperate. This is taken out of context. We were worried about his health. We only wanted you to what? I snapped. My voice cut like a whip. Protect me? By stealing everything I built? By burying me alive in a care home while you drained my accounts dry? The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Dustin stood now, fists trembling. You think anyone believes this circus? You're just an old man clinging to scraps of dignity. Nobody cares. I smiled. Small. Sharp. Then you won't care about this. I dropped the last sheet onto the table. A certified notice from the district attorney's office, pending charges for fraud, forgery, and elder exploitation. The sheriff stepped forward, unfolding 2 envelopes. Dustin Selvers. Amanda Selvers. You've been served. Gasps. Murmurs. Amanda collapsed back into her chair, eyes wide, shaking. Dustin cursed, tried to shove the papers away, but the deputy pressed them against his chest until he took them. My granddaughter stood then, her voice clear and steady. Grandpa's the only honest person in this house. You tried to ruin him. You almost ruined me. I'm done with both of you. The room broke into whispers again, but this time not against me. Against them. Amanda covered her face. Dustin just stared at the floor, shoulders caving in. The proud son, reduced to nothing but a cautionary tale. I closed the folder. Family is supposed to be blood. Love. Loyalty. Tonight you all saw what happens when it turns into greed instead. I left the papers on the table. Let the town look. Let them whisper. Let the shame grow legs and walk wherever Dustin and Amanda tried to hide. On my way out, my granddaughter slipped her hand into mine. Small, strong, certain. We walked into the night together. Cool air. Crickets. The weight finally off my chest. Behind us, the hall buzzed with the death of 2 reputations. At home, I poured a single drink. Sat on the porch. The stars over red oaks burned sharp and clear. They thought they'd bury me, but I buried them in evidence, in truth, in front of everyone who mattered. I took a long sip, let the burn settle, and finally allowed myself the smallest smile. Game over, I whispered.